Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're going to crack open the world of the Dynamics 365 Business Central database.
Ooh, excited.
I know, right?
Yeah.
No, I know what you're thinking.
Yeah.
Databases. Not exactly a thrill a minute.
But what if I told you that this is like
Yeah.
the secret sauce
Yeah.
behind Business Centrals, those customization superpowers and those smooth cloud updates that everyone loves.
Yeah.
We're going to uncover like the blueprints of the system so you can see how developers can build like these incredible custom solutions without, bringing the whole thing crashing down.
Yeah, it's a lot like understanding the structure of,
Right.
a well-organized city.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to build a skyscraper without knowing where the power lines run.
Right.
So we're going to explore the different districts of the Business Central database and the rules that keep everything running smoothly.
Okay, so before we get into like the nuts and bolts, I think it's helpful to get a sense of, the landscape. What are the main components of this digital city? Well, every city needs places to store things, right?
Mhm.
And in Business Central, that's where tables come in. These are like the digital warehouses. They hold all of the raw data, customer details, product info, inventory levels, the works.
So if tables are the warehouses, what about like the storefronts, the places where people actually interact with all the goods?
That's where pages come in. They're the user interface, the windows and forms that you see on your screen. Pages display that information from the tables in a way that's easy to understand and work with.
Makes sense. So you've got the data stored in tables, presented through pages. What else makes up this city?
Well, every business needs reports, right? Organized summaries of what's happening. Think of them as the cities, like news bulletins, providing insight into things like sales, inventory, financial performance. And in Business Central, reports present data in a structured, printable format.
Okay, so we've got storage, interfaces, and reports. What about like the people who keep everything running? Is there like a city council or something?
You could say that. In Business Central, code units are where the action happens. These are containers for chunks of code that perform specific actions based on user input or system events. Think of them as the city's workers, diligently carrying out tasks behind the scenes.
I'm starting to see how this all fits together, but a city also needs ways to like search for information and connect with the outside world, right? What handles that?
So for searching and extracting specific information from the database, we have queries. These are like the city's librarians. They help you quickly find the exact data you need. And for exchanging information with other systems, we have XML ports. They handle imports and exports in standard formats, like the city's import-export terminals. Keep those goods flowing.
Okay, so we've got our warehouses, storefronts, news bulletins, workers, librarians, even import-export terminals. This is quite the bustling city. But with so much going on, wouldn't it be easy for things to get disorganized? Or for developers to bump into each other's work?
That's where the genius of Business Central's structure comes in. One of the key things to understand is that a single database can actually hold information for multiple companies, each with its own separate set of data.
This is more like a metropolis, with multiple districts, representing different companies, each with its own data, but sharing the same infrastructure.
Perfect analogy. So the data is mostly company-specific, but the objects that define how the application works, the pages, reports, code units, and so on, those are shared across all the companies in the database.
That seems incredibly efficient, no duplication of effort. And updates apply to everyone seamlessly. But even with this separation, wouldn't it still be possible for developers to step on each other's toes? Imagine like two teams accidentally creating objects with the same name. That could cause matricon.
That's where Business Central's object numbering conventions come in. Think of it like the city's zoning system. Different areas are designated for specific purposes to prevent chaos and ensure everything runs smoothly. Every object in the system has a unique ID number, and these numbers follow very specific ranges.
So it's like a system of addresses.
Yeah.
Making sure every building has its own unique place within the city.
Exactly. And the most important thing to remember is that the core Business Central application, the essential code provided by Microsoft, occupies the first addresses, numbers 0 to 49,999. This zone is strictly off-limits for developers.
That makes sense. You wouldn't want anyone messing with the city's foundational infrastructure. But
Yeah.
what about those developers who need to build custom solutions? Where do they get to play?
Well, the next zone, numbers 50,000 to 99,999, is where things get interesting. This area is specifically reserved for customizations and testing, particularly for tailoring solutions to individual companies.
So that's where developers can add their own buildings and features. without disrupting, like, the core city functions.
Exactly. And then, for those solutions that need to cater to different countries and regions, different languages, currencies, regulations. There's the zone from 100,000 to 999,999. Think of it like having different districts, tailored to specific cultural nuances.
So it's like a truly global metropolis, accommodating diverse needs while maintaining like a cohesive structure. But what about those larger scale solutions that are meant to be shared across multiple companies and industries? Where do they fit in?
That's where we get into skyscraper territory. Numbers 1 million to 69,999,999. These addresses are reserved for, larger, more complex solutions that are distributed through Microsoft's Registered Solution Program.
So it's like having dedicated zones for like specialized industries and functions.
Yeah.
But what about those individual developers who want to contribute to the Business Central ecosystem? Do they have a place in this city too?
Absolutely. And that brings us to the App Store of our digital metropolis, AppSource, apps distributed through the Microsoft Commercial Marketplace. Occupy the addresses from 70 million to 74,999,999.
So it's like a bustling marketplace where developers can showcase their creations and businesses can find like pre-built solutions to specific needs.
Exactly. Now, here's a key point. For those aspiring developers out there, if you're building an app for Business Central Online, you actually need to request a specific object range from Microsoft. Think of it like getting a building permit before you start construction. It ensures that your solution won't conflict with anything else in the system. That makes perfect sense. It's like having a city planning department, making sure every new development fits within the overall design. But even with this meticulous numbering system, wouldn't it still be possible for developers to create confusion? Imagine two teams, independently developing solutions with objects that have the same name. Wouldn't that cause a digital traffic jam?
You're absolutely right. And that's where prefixes and suffixes come in. These are short identifiers that developers add to object names to prevent those dreaded name collisions that can wreak havoc on a system.
Okay, so prefixes and suffixes are like adding street names to our address system. Instead of just having a building number, we now have a complete address that pinpoints its exact location within the city.
Perfect analogy. It ensures that every object has a unique identifier, even if two developers happen to use the same base name. Imagine one developer creates a report called sales analysis, and another developer creates a different report with the same name. That could lead to some serious confusion, right? Absolutely. But with prefixes or suffixes, those reports could become ABC sales analysis and XYZ sales analysis, instantly eliminating the conflict.
Precisely. It's a simple but powerful way to maintain order and prevent those digital traffic jams that you mentioned.
So let me get this straight. We have object numbering conventions to create distinct zones within the database, like a city zoning system. And then we have prefixes and suffixes to prevent naming conflicts within those zones, like adding street names to our addresses. It's a multi-layered system to keep everything running smoothly.
Exactly. It's a lot like building a well-organized city. Every element has its place, and there are clear rules to prevent chaos and ensure everything works together harmoniously.
This is fascinating. I never realized how much thought and structure goes into something as seemingly simple as a database. But understanding these building blocks is crucial for anyone who wants to truly unlock the power of Business Central, right?
Absolutely. Whether you're a developer building custom solutions or a business user looking to optimize your processes, knowing how these pieces fit together empowers you to make informed decisions and get the most out of this powerful platform.
This has been a great overview of the Business Central database. We've covered a lot of ground, from tables and pages to prefixes and object numbering conventions. But I have a feeling we've only just scratched the surface.
You're absolutely right. There's a whole world of development best practices and advanced concepts that we haven't even touched on yet.
Well, folks, that wraps up part 1 of our deep dive into the Business Central database. Don't go anywhere because in part 2, we'll explore those development best practices and see how developers work within this structured environment to build those incredible custom solutions that we talked about. Stay tuned.
Yeah. Welcome back to our deep dive into the Business Central database. We've laid out the city plan, explored the different districts, and now it's time to see how those developers actually work within this structured environment.
Exactly. Yeah. We've got our like metaphorical blueprints, but now I'm kind of itching to understand the construction rules. How do developers build those amazing custom solutions without, accidentally knocking down a load-bearing wall?
Well, one of the most important principles is this concept of extensions. Remember how we talked about that core Business Central application being off limits?
Right.
Extensions are the magic that let developers add new features or tweak existing ones without ever touching that original code.
So instead of remodeling the existing building, it's more like adding a carefully designed extension that seamlessly integrates with the original structure.
That's a great way to put it. And this is crucial in a cloud environment like Business Central Online. It means Microsoft can roll out updates and everyone benefits without worrying that those updates will clash with existing customizations.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like getting a software upgrade that automatically works with all your custom features. No conflicts, no headaches. But how do these extensions actually work? What's going on under the hood?
Essentially, extensions are specialized objects that target specific parts of the existing application. There are different types of extensions for tables, pages, reports, you name it. They give developers the tools to add fields, change layouts, create new events, all while leaving the original object untouched.
So if I wanted to, add a new field to track, say, preferred communication method for each customer, I would modify the core customer table directly. I'd create a table extension that adds that field specifically.
Exactly. And this is where those prefixes and suffixes we discussed become absolutely essential. Imagine multiple extensions all trying to add a field with the same name, chaos, but with those unique identifiers. Each extension's changes stay neatly organized and conflict-free.
It's all starting to click now. The zoning system, the prefixes, the extensions. It's like an incredibly well-organized construction site.
Right.
With everyone working in their designated areas, using clearly labeled materials.
Precisely. And just like on a construction site, there are best practices that developers need to follow to ensure everything is built to code.
Okay, let's talk about those best practices. What are some, key things that developers need to keep in mind when creating solutions for Business Central?
Wow. It all starts with understanding the different object types and how they work together. We touched on this earlier. But when you're actually building something, you need to go deeper than just knowing what a table or a page is.
So it's not enough to just know the names of the tools. You need to know how to use them effectively.
Exactly. For example, when designing tables, developers need to think carefully about the data types they use for each field, how those tables relate to each other, and how to optimize them for efficient data retrieval. It's about crafting a solid foundation for the entire application.
It sounds like there's a real art to database design, just like there's an art to architecture. It's not just about throwing things together. It's about understanding the principles of structure and functionality.
Precisely. And the same goes for pages. Those user interfaces we talked about. Developers need to consider the user experience, make sure the interface is intuitive, easy to navigate, and optimized for the specific tasks users need to perform.
So it's not just about making the application work. It's about making it work well for the people who'll be using it every day.
Exactly. And that brings us to another crucial best practice, understanding object numbering conventions. We talked about those different ranges, but there's more to it than just picking a number at random.
Okay, I'm all ears. What are some insider tips for working with those object IDs?
One of the most important things is to avoid hard-coding those IDs directly into your code. Instead, developers should use symbolic names or variables that reference those IDs.
I'm guessing this has something to do with flexibility and avoiding those digital traffic jams we talked about earlier.
You got it. Let's say you have a code unit that references a table with the ID 50,100. If you ever need to change that table's ID, you'd have to manually hunt down every instance of 50,100 in your code and update it. That's a recipe for errors and frustration.
It sounds like trying to rewire a building by tracing each individual wire, instead of having a labeled circuit breaker. A nightmare.
A perfect analogy. But if you use a symbolic name, like customer table, you can simply update that name's definition in one place, and every reference in your code automatically updates. Clean, efficient, and far less prone to errors.
So it's all about working smarter, not harder. Using those symbolic names is like having a clear labeling system for every component in the system.
Precisely. And speaking of working smarter, another essential best practice is thorough testing. No matter how carefully you plan and build, it's impossible to catch every potential issue before you actually run the code.
Testing makes sense in any software development context. But are there specific things to consider in the world of Business Central, given its, cloud-based nature and the fact that customizations could affect multiple companies.
Absolutely. With cloud applications, any errors can have a ripple effect. That's why developers need to rigorously test their solutions in isolated environments, often called sandboxes, before releasing them into the wild.
So it's like having a staging area where you can make sure everything works perfectly
Yeah.
before, the curtain goes up on opening night. No unexpected surprises for the audience.
That's a great way to visualize it. And it's not just about functional testing, making sure the code does what it's supposed to do. Developers also need to think about performance testing.
Performance testing. That's about making sure the solution runs smoothly and efficiently, right? Especially important in a multi-tenant environment where you don't want one company's processes bogging down the whole system.
Exactly. You need to simulate multiple users accessing the system, pushing it to its limits to identify any bottlenecks or areas that need optimization. It's like making sure your building can handle rush hour traffic without the elevators grinding to a halt.
It's fascinating how these analogies from the physical world apply so well to the digital world of software development.
They really do. And that's why a deep understanding of the Business Central database structure is so crucial. It's not just about abstract concepts. It's about understanding how those concepts translate into real-world functionality, performance, and user experience.
I'm starting to realize that building solutions for Business Central is a lot like being an architect. It's not just about knowing how to lay bricks or install windows. It's about seeing the big picture, understanding how all those pieces fit together to create a functional, efficient, even beautiful structure.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's about combining technical expertise with a deep understanding of business needs and user expectations.
We've covered so much ground in this part of our deep dive. Extensions, best practices, the importance of testing, and performance optimization. It's amazing how much goes on behind the scenes to make Business Central such a powerful and adaptable platform.
We've explored some key strategies for building robust and scalable solutions, but we've only just begun to scratch the surface of the tools and techniques available to Business Central developers.
Well, folks, that wraps up part 2 of our exploration. But don't go anywhere, because in part 3, we're going to zoom out a bit and talk about the evolution of Business Central development, the trends that are shaping the future of the platform, and what it all means for businesses and aspiring developers. Stay tuned. Welcome back for the final act of our Business Central database deep dive. We've explored the city plan, delved into the construction rules. Now I'm curious about the future of this digital metropolis. What trends are shaping the way that developers build solutions, and what does it all mean for the businesses using those solutions?
Yeah, it's fascinating to see how much Business Central development has evolved, right? I think one of the most significant shifts has been the move towards cloud-based development. Remember those on-premises systems where developers had to manage everything from servers to security updates?
Yeah, sounds like owning a house. You have complete control, but also all the responsibility for maintenance and upkeep.
Exactly. But with Business Central Online, those days are fading. Developers can now focus on building those amazing solutions without getting bogged down in, infrastructure management. It's like moving into a luxury apartment building where all the amenities and maintenance are taken care of for you.
Makes a lot of sense. It frees up developers to focus on, innovation and creativity, which ultimately benefits businesses like mine that rely on Business Central. But this shift to the cloud must have other implications too, right?
Absolutely. One of the biggest advantages is the speed of innovation. Microsoft can now roll out updates and new features much more frequently, which keeps Business Central at the cutting edge of, business application technology.
So it's like living in a city that's constantly evolving and improving, with new amenities and services popping up all the time.
Yeah. And the best part is that these updates are seamless. Businesses can benefit from the latest advancements without having to go through, those painful on-premises upgrade cycles that we used to dread.
Yeah, it's like those automatic software updates on your phone.
Yeah.
Happening in the background so you can just enjoy the new features without any disruption. Speaking of making things easier, I've heard a lot of buzz about low-code development platforms lately. How are those impacting the world of Business Central development?
Low-code platforms like Power Apps and Power Automate are a game changer. They're empowering non-technical users, so-called citizen developers, to build custom solutions, which further democratizes the development landscape.
So it's not just about those hardcore coders anymore. Anyone with a good idea and a bit of tech savvy can contribute. That's incredibly exciting.
It is, and it opens up a whole new world of possibilities for businesses to, streamline their processes, automate tasks, and glean insights from their data without relying solely on IT departments or external developers.
It's like giving every resident of our digital metropolis the tools to build and customize their own spaces.
Yeah, that's a great way to visualize it. And this trend is only going to accelerate in the future, right? We can expect even more intuitive tools and frameworks that leverage cutting-edge technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and the Internet of Things.
Whoa. AI-powered business processes, predictive analytics, smart automation. The possibilities are mind-blowing. It sounds like Business Central is evolving into a truly intelligent platform.
It is. And as the platform becomes more sophisticated, right, the demand for skilled Business Central developers, both the hardcore coders and the citizen developers, will continue to grow.
So for anyone listening who's thinking about, like, a career in tech, this is a field with tremendous potential. But what skills will be most valuable in this evolving landscape? Is it all about mastering, like, the technical aspects of Business Central development?
Technical proficiency is certainly essential, but it's no longer enough. The most successful developers will be those who can combine their technical chops with, a deep understanding of business processes, problem-solving skills, and the ability to collaborate effectively with stakeholders.
It's like being a digital architect who not only understands the building materials, but also knows how to design a structure that meets the specific needs of the people who will live and work in it.
You got it. It's about being a business technologist, someone who can bridge the gap between the technical and the practical, translating business needs into innovative solutions.
This deep dive has been a revelation. We've journeyed from, the nuts and bolts of tables and code units to the grand vision of an intelligent, ever-evolving platform. I'm walking away with a whole new appreciation for the power and potential of Business Central.
It's been a pleasure sharing these insights with you and our listeners. We've only just scratched the surface of this fascinating world, but hopefully we've sparked your curiosity and given you a glimpse of the possibilities.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with a challenge. Knowing what you now know about the structure of the Business Central database, the tools available, and the trends shaping its future, what kind of, game-changing solution would you build? What problem would you solve? Or opportunity would you seize?
That's a great question to ponder. The Business Central ecosystem is brimming with potential, and with the right blend of technical skills, business acumen, and creative vision, anyone can contribute to shaping its future. So go out there, explore the possibilities, and let your imagination run wild. You might just be the one to build the next killer app that revolutionizes the way businesses operate.
Beautifully said. We hope this deep dive has inspired you to explore the world of Business Central and discover the power it holds to transform your business or launch your tech career. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep diving deeper.